This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome, Rabbi. So this is part 6 of the series on the transmission and history of Kabbala. So we just learned that Rav Chaim Vital wrote something called Madura Basra, which he buried. Why he buried it was Machlokes, Rav Meir Paparish, and Rav Yakov Hilal. But now the question is, so how do we have it today? Okay, again, we're not here to, we're not discussing who should learn Kabbala, when you should learn Kabbala, just to be aware of the history of what Kabbala is. Again, Rav Chaim Vital wrote a Madura Kama. That Madura Kama is called the Eitz Chaim. That is a body of material that we do have. In the Madura Kama, there's something called the 600 pages, which was condensed into 3 books, which is called, which was condensed into 3 books, which is called Sefer Hadrushim, Sefer HaKavonos, that we learned about last time. Those were the 3. I'm going to tell you with the Sefer Hadrushim, Sefer HaKavonos, and Sefer HaLikutim, Sefer Likutim, and then he wrote a Madura Basra, which he decided to bury. So now we're on page Chavtes. His Galos Haksavim Agnuzim Tiurim Varichazim Saram Bidei Rav Tzemach. He says as follows: Ulam b'shamayim acheres yo'atzu. Heaven had other plans. V'nizgalu oitzur eschem de'elam b'taras ha'tohaim. And these treasures were uncovered. Who are they uncovered by? The Goyin HaMekubal, Rabbi Avraham Azulai. Who's Rabbi Avraham Azulai? The father of the grandfather of the Chida. The great-grandfather of the Chida. We're going to see. The Chasher Hayid b'hakdamasoi l'sifrei, as he testifies in the introduction to the Sefer, or Achama on the Zayar. Uv'chemlas Hashem Olai, in God's mercy on me, bo liyadi roiv sifrei harav eleki Rav Chaim Vital. I got a hold of most of his books. In God's infinite mercy on me, I got a hold of most of his books. Now, how did he get it? Asher kibel me harav eleki Rabbi Yitzchak Ashkenazi, in Birik Sas L'Shoinois, mi Sefer Hazayar, shechidosh hu, koidem shalom and eleki. With commentary on the Zayar that he came up with before he began to learn with Ari. B'chsav Yad Arav. V'hem mechukim, they're erased, u'metushtashim, and smudged, u'kruim, u'mefuzarim, b'harim mekoimos. And I gathered them. V'ein safek shekavanasai haisa l'kisei ha Madura Basra. It is clear that Rabbi Avraham, now what is Rabbi Avraham Azulai referring to that he got a hold of it? Obviously it's a second edition. I would ask, why? Why is it obvious? If he's saying that Rav Chaim Vital wrote Perushim on the Zayar before he learned with the Arizal, so maybe this is even pre-Madura Kama. Okay, let's see what his proof is. Chada v'oid kamina. Chada demehechan bo'idei Rav Avraham Azulai kisur Chaim atzmai. How did Rav Avraham Azulai get these manuscripts? We know how carefully Rav Chaim Vital guarded everything. And he never let anyone copy it. Even the arrangement of the Kabbala that he heard from his Rabbi, the Eitz Chaim, he gave to one of his children. Nobody else was allowed to look at it. Like Rav Shmuel Vital says in his Akdama. That's some Ksav Yad Kodesh Mamish. So what exactly are these manuscripts that were revealed to Rav Avraham Azulai while Rav Chaim Vital was still alive? Ukedemuchach mi Birchas HaChaim shekasav al yad shemoi Rav Chaim Vital pa'amayim. Meaning, these manuscripts that Rav Avraham Azulai found, he found it while Rav Chaim Vital was alive. Because Rav Avraham Azulai added the words Neiro Yoyer to Rav Chaim Vital. When he says, look, he says, I found.
Then he would have had to ask permission to be able to.
Rav Chaim Vital Neiro. He wrote, he wrote that he found the manuscripts of Rav Chaim Vital while Rav Chaim Vital was alive.
Yeah, that's right. So we have neither shoes. So we could take
and also, why does he say they were erased and smudged and ripped? Why were they smudged and ripped? The author is alive. Why do they look so
frail.
They look like they aged. They must be writings that he took out of Geniza. Now again, I'm an amateur here, but I would respectfully ask that how does this prove that this is Madura Basra? We all know Rav Chaim Vital learned Kabbala before he met the Ari, and maybe once he met the Ari, he realized that whatever he learned before was not on par, and he put it away. And he was going to it. So how do you know this is the second edition of Rav Chaim Vital? Maybe this is his own Kabbala, as Rav Avraham Azulai himself says, that Rav Chaim Vital wrote a Peirush on the Zohar from what he learned, me'atzmai koydem, that he learned with the Arizal.
But if he found it while he was still alive,
Yeah.
he how could he do anything with it without asking permission?
Oh.
And if he asked permission, he would have said so. And if he didn't ask permission...
No, he didn't ask permission.
How is he allowed to do this?
That's the story of the Kabbala. Whoever is transmitting it doesn't always...
But he's still alive.
First do and ask later, as they say.
It's easy to apologize and ask permission.
And we're not talking about, the hoi polloi here. We're talking about, big gadol, a tzaddik.
Yeah. So let's see. We're learning this together. Okay. And the question is, where did he find it?
Yeah, well.
Okay? So we're going to see. Hopefully. V'achin hadvar mufurashim v'varim ber heita b'akdamas harit semach. In the bottom paragraph on page Lamed. These words are mufurash and mavur very clearly in the Hakdama of the Rit Samach, in the Sefer Kol Barama, and in the Hakdama of Maram Paparish on the Derech Eitz Chaim. V'chashar natik l'shoinam l'inyanenu kan b'samach. V'zel l'shoin harit samach sham. V'hinei b'soif shana harishayna. At the end of the first year, Shabasi pa Yerushalayim. The Rit Samach says, at the end of the first year that I came to Jerusalem, Bo liyadi kama drushim chadashim ashar harbe mehem einam b'shum sefer. I found many drushes that are not printed anywhere. Now, he writes in a footnote here, we don't know how the Rit Samach got it. He doesn't say. But we're going to see he got it from Rabbi Azulai. Fine. Afilu ba'oisam shabiyad b'noish Rav Chaim Vital. Even Rav Chaim Vital's son's sefer, these drushos don't appear. V'him drushim amukim, they're very deep. V'kulam ksum e'ezelikim Rav Chaim. Atzmei, they're all written in the holy handwriting of Rav Chaim Vital himself. B'shem harav Yitzchak Ashkenazi, in the name of the Ari. Now, this is not necessarily consistent with what we said before, that there were a Peirush on the Zayar from Chaim Vital from what he learned before he met the Ari.
Well, we weren't sure about that. It was possible.
It says in Beer.
He was conflicted that maybe this was before.
No, Rav Azulai said in Beer Ktsas L'Shoinois Asher Chideshu Koidim Shalom Adem. Okay, be it as it may. V'kulam ksum ezelikim Rav Chaim b'shem Rav Yitzchak Asher Anu Karmasei Rav Stam Chasfarim. V'hinei HaRav Chaim Samoi Sam B'Geniza Kfurim. Rav Chaim buried them. Umeiroi Vazman Nimchaku V'Nikru Ktsas Mehem. Some of it ripped of a prat bezavi, especially in the corners of Ktsei Hadafim. V'hinei hayu ba'osim hadafim dvar mefuzarim. These words were very scattered. V'azrani Hashem Yisbarach v'itzeisi la'ar mishpati kol drush udrush. I brought out each drush. On page Lamed Beis now. You don't have Lamed Beis? Now you do. Okay. But keep Lamed Aleph.
So he buried it. He unearthed it. He took dug it
Yeah.
out.
So the question is, where did he bury it?
He dug it out.
Okay, somebody dug it out. People dig out people to bury them elsewhere, and people grave diggers. You never know what you're going to find. That's the adventure of digging graves. Vasisi mehem. The Rit Samach says, I made from them Chamisha Svarim, 5 books. And I, the Rit Samach, named the books. You know what they're called? The Rishon Kehilas Yaakov, the second Oilas Tamid, the third Adam Yashar. And I basically, guess what? I named it a name that actually describes what's inside. Can you imagine? Ki al kol asher shmo b'kei karasikach v'hu shoresh v'ikar kol adrushim v'tikun v'igulam kirabu v'hu choshev etzli yosem kol shar sfarim. This book, Adam Yashar, is the root of all the drushim, and is the most chashuv. The fourth is called, this is a very famous one. This is a sefer that, when people begin to learn the Kabbala, they begin with the sefer Rav Chaim. V'hu sefer shalem shekachaya. Ubay kol drushei adam kadmoin. V'shar drushei atikon. And the drushim are masudar, one after the other, with chedushim and tosefes. The fifth one is called Zoyar Harakia. This is basically an arrangement on the Zoyar Masudar based on the Parshios. These books were written in the handwriting of Rav Chaim Vital through his own fingers in the name of the Ari. And I edited it and I went through it and we sifted through it. Okay, now, again, we didn't say where it was found. So look in footnote Chavtas. Now we're on page Lamed Aleph. Ein Mukdam Mu'uchar. You do have page Lamed Aleph.
Yes.
Says Rabbi Yakov Hilal in this footnote, Mistamos l'shoiner shall read Samach kan nirish Rav Chaim Vital ba'atzmai kavram begniza. The language of the read Samach seems to show that Rav Chaim Vital himself buried them. So how are we going to find out where they found it? Who would know where Rabbi Avraham Azulai perhaps buried found these treasures?
Rav Chaim's son.
Rabbi Avraham Azulai's great-grandson, the Chidah. The Chidah now is going to tell us maybe where his El Tazeda found these documents. Says the Chidah in the Sefer Shem HaGedolim, under the title of Rav Chaim Vital, Ach ein b'sha'orim haniskarim madura basra. In all the 8 gates of Rav Shmuel Vital of the Eitz Chaim, you don't have the second edition. Ki Rav Chaim Vital tziva lagonza b'kivroi. Rav Chaim Vital said, bury it in my grave.
You got to trust somebody else.
But here's the thing. Rav Avraham Azulai took it out when he was alive. So, does that stem? V'Rabbanon Kadishi.
If he had a designated kever.
He had a pre-order of his kever. Okay, people do that, right?
Yeah.
He's
They don't usually open it up before it's time.
V'Rabbanon Kadishi Asher Badar Al Yadai Al Yedei Yichudim. They didn't dig it up. They enchanted Kabbalistic names. Hoitziu mikivroi bershusai al yedei she'elas chaloim. They used Kabbala to remove it with the permission of Rav Chaim Vital.
Why would he give permission?
Uboli dem Rav Yakov Tzemach and Rav Meir Paperish Katz.
Wow.
So now here we're getting a story. It was in his kever. Now obviously we asked before, but he was alive. But here we're learning that they had his permission to remove it.
Because the Shemaim, they changed his mind. So
Well, that was the case. Why they have to use Shemos? They could have just dug it up if they had permission.
Maybe when it was put there, it wasn't dug, it was put in with Shemais. And we know the way it comes out has to be the way it comes in, So I'm just reporting the facts. V'ayin shamoid. Look further in the Chidah, in the Maracha of Svarim. He says, "V'yeshnam shinuyim b'dvarav sham gabe gufa d'hayov dehechi hava v'tzarch iyan." There are like different accounts. And asked Rabbi Yakov Hilal, it's a pella that it was hidden from the diamond eyes of the Chidah. What his great-grandfather, Rabbi Avraham Azulai, writes befeirush in the Arachama that it was revealed during the life of Rav Chaim Vital. So again, I don't know why that's a question, because we just said they had his permission. And if you look in the Hakdama of the Rit Tzemach, Rabbi Yaakov Tzemach, to the Rav Chaim, then now there's a big machlokes where it was buried. Was it buried in Damascus, or was it buried in Tzfas? Then the Rav Chaim says it was buried in Tzfas. So I spoke to Rabbi Mervis. He told me, a good trivia is what is buried in the cemetery in Tzfas. Most people would say actually, we have a tradition. 1.2 million Yidden are buried in that cemetery. But besides that, we have Kisvei Kabbala buried there. Also in the Hakdama of Yaakov Tzemach, the Kol Rama, Kasav, Shabog Sam Elo Yidei Rav Ramazlai, more than 25 years ago. And he received them from him in Yerushalayim. And this Hakdama, Rav Yaakov Tzemach wrote in the year 1643. That means, if he wrote in 1643, That means these ksavim were revealed to Rav Chaim Vital, to Rav Azulai already back in the year 1618. And that's Rav Chaim Vital was still alive. So again, that means Rav Yaakov Tzemach is testifying. He saw them in 1643, and Rav Azulai already had them in 1618. During the life of Rav Chaim Vital.
Do we know when they were written? What year?
Not exact. And where was Rav Chaim Vital living in the year 1618? He was living in Damascus, and he did not pass away until 1625.
And so they found it in Tzfat? The kever was in
So
Tzfat.
that implies that what? So one second. Now here's the thing. Reb Chaim Vital said to bury it. The Chida reports that Reb Chaim Vital said to bury it in his kever. Where's Reb Chaim Vital buried?
Tzfat?
No, I've been to Tzfas. Reb Chaim Vital is not buried in Tzfas. The Arizal is buried in Tzfas. The Ramak is buried in Tzfas.
Damascus?
The Rabbi Yosef Karo is buried in Tzfas. I don't think Reb Chaim Vital is buried in Tzfas. Reb Chaim Vital, after the Arizal died, went back to the Damascus. He went back, and I believe he died there. So now, again, Rabbi Yaakov Tzemach writes that these Ksav were revealed to Avraham Azulai in the year that he saw him have it in the year 1643, but he already had it in the year 1618. And we know Rav Chaim Vital did not pass away until 1625. So how could you say that it was buried in Damascus and they took it out in Damascus? It wasn't buried in Damascus. Rav Chaim Vital wasn't dead yet. What's going on?
The sound is
It's off. I don't know why. It's more garbled. The sound.
It's garbled? How is it now? How is it?
Better. Whoops.
Okay, don't touch it. Don't touch it.
It's mechukim with
Okay.
It's better now.
Okay. V'oid, echyal al adas sherabanan kadishi asher bedar yasu shelas chaloim v'apsakas v'yichudim l'ftach kibbur Rav Chaim Vital ulahoitzi. No, don't touch. Ulahoitzi kisei hamadura basra mikivra shebedamesek belila shati mem es Rav Shmuel Vital benoi umamala mekoymoi shezgora be'er damesek. Meaning like this. How could you say that these old rabbis in that generation, they made a shelas chalaim, and they did these yichudim to open up the kever of Chaim Vital, and without getting the permission of Rav Shmuel Vital, who is Mamala Makam, who's living in Damascus, Rav Shmuel Vital never even talks about the, he doesn't even talk about the Madura Basra. So basically Rav Yakov Hilal is incredulous that they found these manuscripts in the kever of Rav Chaim Vital in Damascus. Then, says Rabbi Yaakov, he says, I saw that the Chida himself in the Shem HaGdolim, under the Erech, the Rabbi Yaakov Tzemach, he writes, V'hayu kvurim shegenozam Rav Chaim Vital atzmai. They were buried, that Rav Chaim Vital himself buried it. So that implies they didn't, not that it was buried in Rav Chaim Vital's kever, but rather Rav Chaim Vital buried it. Okay, so basically, we don't know where. Now, once Rav Chaim Vital buried it, maybe he buried it earlier. Because Rav Avraham Azulai already had these documents in 1618.
So how was it found? Was it mystery? How was it found?
Rav Avraham Azulai found it, but we don't know exactly where. It's unclear where. Let's finish this up and then we'll break. So then finally, in summation, on page Lamed Gimel, V'zal Shon Rav Meir Paperish in the Hakdama to Derech Eitz Chaim. He says, Ki nimtza b'chibur zeh tehillah akel yizbarach shemai dvarim she'enon afilu be'Eitz Chaim shum remez mehem. There in this Madura Basra we find things that there's no remez to in the Eitz Chaim. Ve'im Madura Basra that was made after the Eitz Chaim. U'leroiv oimka ganza Rav Chaim Vital. And he buried it, like we said earlier, his opinion is they buried it because it was so deep. V'nesgalu sharei ela Sharei Oira Elo, these gates of light were revealed. Va'oitzrois shetachas ha'tahaim, and these treasures that were under the tahaim hayu chafurim, yamim v'shanim kulai, they lay buried days, years. L'moirei ha'chacham Hashem Rav Yaakov Tzemach Ksumes Velikim Atzer, Mashenimtza, Yodafim Ketanim Krim Vluyim, Uvroiv Chachmasai Harama, Rabbi Yaakov Tzemach, was able to Chiber Echel Echav Asem Arba Svarim, Oitzres Chaim, and V'hu Sefer Shalom, Me'akdam Mashenimtza L'Chachma Azois, from the second edition, and then he made something called Kilas Yaakov, and then Adam Yashar, and then Oilas Tamid. So again, this is also all part of the mystique of the Kabbala, as we mentioned. The first Nadura Kama we have from the Shemain, from the 600 pages, which were bribed, yeah, and then the other Svarim that we have today comes from the episode of the Madura Basra that was buried and somehow was unearthed. Okay, Rabbi Say.
The manuscript available today. Do we know where it is?
Of the Madura Basra? I don't know.
No print. No print.
I don't know. Okay, Rabbi Say, we'll hold it over here. Rabbi Say.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.